Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining today. My name is McKay Bird, and I am the Marketing Director here at TCN. I'd like to thank you for joining today's webinar, Connecting and Collecting for Work from Home, Refining Communication and Compliance in All Environments. We are excited for today's topic and panelists. I want to thank Balto Software and as well as Creditors Bureau for joining us today. Before we start and before I introduce our guest panel, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, the content in this webinar in any form is not meant to be used as legal advice. We recommend that you consult a legal professional before making any changes to your business or operations. Second, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand at TCN's resource center at tcn.com shortly after today's broadcast. Third, we want to invite all and everybody to ask questions throughout today's webinar. This webinar is going to be interactive and we hope that the engagement is high. We are excited to have an open interactive discussion today as we talk about several case studies. Any questions we do not get to in today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up on later today. I encourage you to please use the Q&A control panel to ask your questions. All right, let's get into it and let's meet our panelists. Bryce Payne is the Vice President of Business Development at TCN. Bryce spearheads all partner and channel sales efforts and maintains relationships with all of those business partners. With more than 20 years of experience in the telecommunications industry, Bryce has significantly contributed to the company's success and expanding TCN's partnerships across multiple sectors. Bryce has an incredible wealth of knowledge about call centers and has done extensive business internationally. His experience and understanding of key call center metrics has significantly contributed to his success. Our second panelist today is Mark Bernstein, founder and CEO of Balto, the first real-time guidance for call centers. Mark founded Balto in 2017 after noticing that as a technology sales representative, he constantly made preventable and costly mistakes on his phone calls. Despite weekly coaching with his manager, Mark made the same mistakes again and again. That's when Mark realized that post-call coaching is broken and knew that there had to be a better way. Mark graduated from Washington University in St. Louis with a degree in marketing, psychology, and entrepreneurship, and is on a mission to transform how organizations communicate with their customers. Our third panelist joining us today is Courtney Reynaud, President of Creditors Bureau USA. Courtney is a third generation to own and operate Creditors Bureau. Her professional experience is rooted in the healthcare industry with a special understanding of law and consumer rights. Courtney has participated as a speaker and panelist in multiple compliance-related education events. Courtney also serves on the executive committee for the California Association of Collectors, and in 2019, Courtney was elected to the ACA Board of Directors. On a personal note, Courtney is a lover of all things ocean. Owning a collection agency in this day and age is pretty stressful, but once in the ocean, all that stress and anxiety goes away. It is replaced with a calm focus on just breathing. I want to thank for being here with us today, Courtney and the rest of the guests, and we'd like to thank everyone who's tuned in with us today. Without further delay, I'd like to pass things over to Bryce to kick us off. Bryce?
Thank you, McKay, and thank you everyone for joining. I heard a quote the other day that I really liked, and it said, I want to first thank you for the gift of your time. It is only one of our assets that can never be replaced. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time, both the attendees and the participants in this webinar. Our goal with this webinar is to discuss the challenges you may have faced recently and how you overcame them, and also to look at current struggles and discuss ideas of how to succeed. We all know that business is challenging enough as it is with the standard daily struggles. It's a race every day to be successful, but without entire economies being shut down, people being quarantined, and then add political unrest, earthquakes, even I heard the other day fire tornadoes, which I'm not even quite sure what those are. I mean, really what's next? I do kind of feel like we skipped the murder hornet thing, so I don't know where that left off, but someone told me they feel like we're in a game of Jumanji, and I kind of feel the same. I do kind of feel like so I want to make this webinar as informative as possible. So we are incredibly thankful and fortunate to have Courtney, the president of Creditors Bureau, with us today. She is a mutual client of TCN's and Balto's, and has been able to incorporate the benefits of both technologies to help her face these challenges. But not only face them, she's had some incredible numbers. She's got some incredible numbers to share with us today of some of the successes she's had. We're thankful to her for being willing to set aside her busy day and take the time to share with us. Before we get to that, I did want to take a brief moment to give you an overview of TCN for those of you that may not be familiar. I know most of you are existing clients, but if you're not familiar, TCN has been in business since 1999. We've been around for a very long time. We kind of grew up in the collections world. The very beginning clients were in the collections industry. Over the years, we expanded into multiple different verticals. We currently have offices in St. George, Utah, in New Jersey, in Canada, in Australia, in UK, and also in India. So we've expanded globally, and we've expanded into a lot of different, try to continue to expand our offering, trying to make sure that we keep up with the needs of our clients. We've recently released a lot of different features. We've tried to stay up on top of things like SMS, email. Our payment IVR solutions have been very, very successful and incorporated throughout our customer base. We're trying to do what we can to expand as many possible solutions for self-cure. That's one of the key things that people are looking for, is which ways to be able to enable their agents and their clients to be able to take care of the situations and not rely so heavily on the agents themselves. In these times, I've seen in talking to the agencies, there's been a huge influx of inbound calls, and so more people are taking advantage of our queue callback, where people are able to keep their place in queue and hang up and wait for the next available agent. We've got our manually approved calling platform that is utilized to help keep you compliant with calling cell phones. And we've got some other things that we'll talk about later, talking about call recording, screen recording, and just our overall compliance tools. So that's a quick overview. I know most of you are TCN clients, are probably familiar with a lot of this. I do also want to introduce Mark Bergstein for a moment, give him a moment to talk a little bit about Balto and their technologies. I ran into them a couple of years ago and was just really blown away with the technology they have, how it's able to resolve issues immediately in the call, like was mentioned earlier, instead of waiting till towards the end, after the call is done or the next day. Being able to have the right statements, the rebuttals brought up right at the right time is incredible, and it really caught my attention. So we've been happy to be a partner with them. Mark, give me a moment to talk a little bit about Balto.
Yeah, Bryce, thank you so much. So to start, Balto integrates with 29 different cloud phone systems, but TCN has continuously stood out to us as the ones who have delivered the best service. So we're really excited to be partners with you guys, and thank you very much for your time here. If you run a collections agency, then there are two things that you're thinking about every single day, every minute of the day. And that is, how can I make sure that the collectors are collecting as much revenue as humanly possible? And how can I make sure they're staying compliant? But the tools that you have to actually make that happen are very limited. And the way that the industry has historically seen it is post-call coaching. I'm going to listen for what's happening on the calls. After the fact, I'm going to try to find problems, and I'm going to go up to the collector and say, hey, what were you doing? You blew that call, which means you either blew that call because the payment was lost, or you blew that call because there was some compliance violation that puts you at risk of a suit. And that's how things have historically been done. And what Balto realized is, wait a minute. The collectors hate that experience because they feel like they're in the penalty box. The managers hate that experience because that's not a fun part of their job either. The executives who run the agency hate that experience because they already lost the revenue and they lost the payment and they had a compliance violation. So Balto has looked at that and said, what if we can give recommendations to collectors in real time while they're on their phone calls? How about when the consumer says, as everyone can see over here in the screenshot, honestly, it's been a really tough time. I think I'm going to have to go bankrupt. How can we have Balto hear that and automatically pop up the right talking points for the collectors? So that's actually what we built. And it'll deliver that recommendation, that guidance, we call it, real-time guidance, faster than if you ask Alexa about the weather. So you say, hey, Alexa, what's the weather outside? And you have a consumer who at the same time says, honestly, I think I might have to go bankrupt. Balto will give you an answer first. And then one of the things that does, allows the collector to continuously reinforce the right behaviors. So you don't need to keep coaching again and again and again, especially with some of the folks who are more experienced. When you try to change how they're doing things, that's a really painful process. What if you can eliminate those very uncomfortable conversations and have the AI help reinforce the right habits for new collectors who are just starting out or experienced ones who have had many years under their belt? And then the last is, if we're going to give all of your collectors this guidance on their calls, so they're negotiating effectively and they're staying compliant, they're not forgetting any of their points, then we need to give transparency to the managers and the executives to make sure you all know what's happening on the calls. So Balto in our dashboard suite will tell you how all of your items are trending over time. So, how are your mini Mirandas trending over time? Are your collectors doing more and more of it, or is it kind of trickling off? Then you can see collector by collector who's doing the right stuff and who's not from a negotiation standpoint, as well as a compliance standpoint. And then finally, you can click in call by call and say, this call was suspect. The consumer had some sort of complaint, or they mentioned the Better Business Bureau. I'm going to click on that call and see a quick transcript. So that's what we built. Bryce, thanks for the minute here, and I'll turn it back to you and the TCN team.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. I think what we wanted to do is take a quick moment and just do a poll. I think that was probably the dashboard you're talking about there. So we wanted to take a quick poll to just get a feel for the audience, talk about what you faced, in this move to the workforce, work from home. What were your main challenges? What were the biggest challenges? If you could just quickly take 30 seconds and just click on one of the things that you felt was your number one challenge when you immediately first had to move to a work from home challenge. We're really interested to kind of see the feedback from the audience. I would imagine there's probably a lot of similarities, but I'm interested to kind of see what really was the number one thing. And then once we've gathered that information, talk about it a little bit, we're also going to kind of see what is your biggest challenge now. Some of these things you probably worked through and got those settled. So we'll take a moment and see. I think we're going to just give a quick moment. If you could just click on one of those on your screen, should be able to see that. McKay, how are we coming on results at this point?
Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and close the poll now.
Okay. And what do we see in the way of results? Okay, so IT was not super big. Hardware, webcams, computers, that's actually kind of what I expected. Monitoring at home compliance, and then ongoing training and agent development. Yeah, that's kind of how I expected it would be. Interesting the way that spreads out. Reporting and stuff doesn't seem to have been an issue, but obviously the switch to trying to get all your computers figured out, laptops, what hardware they have at home, trying to get that set up. Interesting to see that wasn't too much to deal with the firewalls. Let's go ahead and take a quick moment and just see what is your biggest struggle now. What are the biggest things you're dealing with now? Now that you've probably worked through some of those technology issues, take a brief moment, click on those questions there. They're actually the same things here that we asked, but I want to kind of see how that's changed. Where you're focus is now. So give it just a few seconds here to be able to see how that goes. Click in on there. Just really interested to see. I think I could probably predict some of it, but I'm interested to see how it plays out here. And as those results come in, our goal is we want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to chat in any questions, any comments as we get further into this, because we want people to share their experiences, share their challenges, and see what we can do as a group collectively to come up with some resolutions. McKay, how are we looking on that? Okay, so it's spread out. Ongoing training and agent performance development is obviously takes the lead heavily. Still some other challenges that you're still dealing with, hardware, monitoring, right? The great thing about that is I think you're going to see, and you're going to see that I think we've got some great solutions for you. There's kind of a core 4 things that we want to focus on. If you want to jump to that other slide. There we go. What we've kind of felt like is, we talk about it's a race every day to be successful, and so reporting, being able to know exactly what's going on with your agents, with your business, and then automation. What can you do to try to take away some of the load on the agents and provide additional solutions for your debtors? Compliance, obviously, the continued concern with all of you, as you well know, and then efficiency, being able to utilize as many tools as possible to be successful. Those are kind of what we figure are the core, and I think what I'd like to do is introduce you to Courtney. We obviously introduced you to her earlier with Creditors Bureau. In addition to the bio you heard earlier, I did want to point out she's an avid scuba diver and actually a free diver, which I marvel at, the ability to be able to go down to 80 feet below the surface and spear fish. That is someone not to mess with there. We're incredibly happy to have her with us today, and have her be able to share her story, because she has been able to incorporate the technologies that we've talked about and a lot of other different aspects of the business to have some incredible successes. She's been able to navigate through some of those challenges you talked about initially. Still obviously has some challenges now, but has had some incredible successes that I think are worth noting. And our goal is what she's been able to see will be able to help you in your business. And like I said, I want you to feel free to chat any questions, make any comments. Let's try to make this as interactive as possible so that we can gain from these experiences. I want to go ahead and just turn the time over to Courtney. And Courtney and I had I had the privilege of talking to her the other day to just kind of get a feedback of some of the things that she's addressed and dealt with. And could you tell us some of the challenges you faced early on, and how you were able to get through those, and what you've done to overcome those challenges, and then also kind of highlight some of your successes and what you're dealing with now?
Yeah, so I would say that the biggest challenge is exactly what everyone also agreed was their biggest challenge starting, which was computers, hardware, computer systems, just anything that you were going to send home with your work from home staff. Some other challenges that we had was even identifying who would be eligible for work from home in your office. Not everyone is eligible for work from home. Maybe it's because of how long they've been employed, or the type of job that they have. For example, you really can't have your payment poster working from home posting payments. You probably can't have your mail person who's picking up the consumer letters and mail working from home. But who can you have working from home, and how do you identify that they're able to physically work from home? And then, of course, getting the computer systems in place. And we went through a huge challenge with that, because we have a disaster recovery plan, but a global pandemic was not built into that disaster recovery plan at all. So we really didn't have machines or computers ready to go to work from home because of system security. We're SOC 2 Type 2 plus high trust. So we were always under the impression that collectors can absolutely not work from home. And so we didn't really have any systems in place or forward thinking of having computers available and ready in the instance of a global pandemic. So we really struggled with that, and we partnered with a vendor that really helped us to provide computers on a loaner type basis for our office that met the special requirements that we needed. And obviously now we're purchasing new systems, considering forward thinking that this may not be over in another 3 months, or really may not be over in 2020 at all. So really looking for the long-term goals. I think once the office was shut down, it was right after ACA Vegas. I remember flying home on Friday and getting a notification Friday the 13th that all of the schools in the Central Valley were shutting down. Which meant my kid and all my employees' children were not going to be able to go to school. And so I got on the phone with my IT person at that point and went, okay, we need to plan that our employees aren't going to be able to work in the office because of the schools shutting down. So we kind of started that and worked all weekend on that process. And Wednesday, our city where we're at shut us down, and Thursday, the state of California was shut down. So we had basically 3 days to identify who those people were and then start working on systems. So I think once we did get home, the next concern was internet and private work areas for your work from home employees, stuff that we really never thought about before. Coverage for inbound calls. How do we get those work from home employees home without having to take home binders and binders of work instructions and call models and all of that? So thankfully we had been working with Balto and we've been working with TCN for a long time. So we went live with Balto in October of last year, 2019. So that was probably the easiest part of our transition, that and the fact that we were on TCN. All you needed was to send your employee home with a computer and a soft phone, and they were good as long as they had some internet coverage and those sorts of things. So that was really good. Yeah, so I know those were our big challenges that we really never considered when we started this process or before this.
I noticed in the poll they mentioned there's still probably, I think it was like 18% were still struggling with the technology, those kind of same things. Have you feel like you've kind of resolved most of that, or is that no longer an issue?
Well, no, we still have machines that we were loaned by Catabat. They were shameless plug. We've not worked with them. They're not a vendor of ours at this point, but they were incredibly kind and generous. They wanted to help agencies, specifically small agencies like our company. And so they provided us with 5 Dell laptops that were Windows 10, and then my IT person was able to program them with the specs that we needed. Obviously, they're a loan. They're not ours. We don't own them. So we are in the process right now of, actually, they probably should be here today, getting new computers that we can bring back the work from home computers that we sent our staff home with, and then repurpose or start these new machines and get those out and deployed to the work from home staff. So no, I mean, yes, we're still going through it. We're still trying to get through the process. I think when everything shut down, specifically in California, you couldn't go to the store and pick up 10 laptops. One, there wasn't any laptops, and 2, all the stores were closed. So even if you could have gotten them, you really couldn't get them. So that was a huge challenge for us, and not as much anymore because we've already implemented that part. But I think the next phase is kind of making it more of a permanent solution than what we initially thought was going to be a 3-week problem.
Perfect. It looked like about 57% said that they're really struggling with being able to, that communication and monitoring of the agents. Could you talk to us a little bit about the successes you've been able to have with that? What have you implemented? Some specifics of how you've been able to stay on top of what's going on with them?
So Balto's been incredibly helpful to have the call analytics. When we sent everybody home with their work from home computers, they all were logging into Balto as well while they're on the phone with TCN. So as that call's happening, they're getting that live checklist, those expectations of items that we want to hear when a collector is talking to a consumer. In a perfect world, what would they say in 99% of the calls? And so that was super helpful, because even when the call went down a rabbit trail of insurance or bankruptcy or work comp, there were deck list items that would pop up so that the agent would be able to know what our policy was and the questions that they should ask in order to stay compliant. And so we had incredible success in when we got everybody working from home. We went from 20 plus collectors on the phone to 6 collectors. And onboarding those 6 collectors was a challenge. So that didn't happen all overnight. This was over, a period of several weeks, starting March 18th, moving into beginning of April. So our statistics in March, we were down year over year in our revenue, which was a bummer, because we were looking really good for March. But we did lose about $58,000, a little over, in net revenue, in our revenue for March. We were just trying to keep everything as even as we could, knowing that we were going to lose revenue with less collectors. In April, we were only down 26,000. So that was when we had our 6 collectors on. And then in May, we went up to 8 collectors and we were up 40,000. And then in June, we went up to 12 collectors and we were at 47,000 year over year. And then July, we were up 67,000 and we were back up to 17 collectors. And they weren't on the entire month, but we had 17 collectors on in July. So that really, we didn't see the drop in revenue that I anticipated and planned for when we had to forecast and update our budget. So that was a surprise. I think the best part about this whole shutdown is that everyone's home. So when you're on the phone and you're talking to consumers, they're actually answering the phone because they too are working from home or just home. And so it does open up the communication channels that really aren't there normally when everyone is at work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So that was kind of a plus that we noticed.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that was really exciting for me to hear when I talked to you, is the fact that you were able to bounce back very quickly, utilize some of the things to stay on top of it. And hey, Mark, maybe what I might do really quickly is, she mentioned, with these agents, the new ones, moving them to home and having that track of what they're saying, giving them the suggested, so they can kind of see a visual how that works. You prepared to maybe show a quick demo of how that works for a second, and just so they can kind of see the real-time aspect of that.
Bryce, absolutely. And I can jump into that in just a sec. You guys, Bryce and McKay and Courtney, saw that right before I was joining this webinar, I was having some audio issues with GoToWebinar, so I'll do my best and hopefully everything cooperates, but I'll show you that in just a second.
Okay, we can. Oh, sorry, I was going to say we could a couple of, if you want to go forward with a few more questions, or are you ready to go forward with that?
I was actually just going to add on to something that Courtney said, because I thought that was a really good point, that things have been different than I think all of us were expecting in the beginning of the pandemic, and also, of course, the beginning of 2020. So I think when it was January 2020, when we all are trying to predict what our years would look like, our years are very, very different than we expected. And then when in March 2020, when it's mid-March and everything's shutting down, I remember, Courtney, I had a similar experience. I was actually had come back from the airport that day, and I am sitting at this airport bar, and I see on the TV the NBA season being canceled. And I was like, wow, something different is happening. So I think we'd all expected that collections would be in a very difficult spot for the foreseeable future. And then I think we were all, after that initial dip, pleasantly surprised by how much volume there is, and how the phone is a particularly useful resource nowadays. In fact, maybe the usefulness of the phone has increased because you can talk to people and have that line of communication. So the last point I'd mentioned before jumping into the demo here is, people are notoriously bad, like just human beings are bad at figuring out what's going to happen, because we look at our patterns and we look at how things have been, and we go, oh, it's probably going to look more like that. But I think that we all have to keep, and I imagine we are, in the top of our minds, that there is going to be a country changing and world changing election in November. No matter what happens, that will be some pretty big political change, in no matter which way the election goes. And I think that, let's imagine that we have a change of power there. We all have seen cycles of how that changes the way that our collectors need to be operating on the phones. And imagine what new compliance could come into play. Imagine some of the challenges that we might experience. And then doing this training and this retraining and this professional development in an era where everybody is remote will be particularly difficult. So as I pop in the demo here, I'd almost put a challenge to everybody and say that I think we have 6 months to build the collections agency of 2030. We have 6 months to build our organizations in a way that when some large change happens in the next 6 months, we are ready and prepared and able to adapt and have everybody staying compliant and see their production at the same levels. So with that said, Bryce, I'd be happy to show a demo. Let me see how I can share my screen here.
Mark, as you're getting that ready, we just had a few comments coming in. I think a few people that did not were able to vote on the poll were saying training and ongoing agent development was their top ongoing concern. But we had a question related to that for Courtney is, Courtney, how are you handling agents who are working from home but are showing up late? How are you handling that, or how are you managing those agents and keeping them on, I guess, on track?
Yeah, so we track all of that. I have a weekly meeting with our remote collectors, is what we call it. We have a remote collector meeting, and we do it on Fridays. That's the time, which is surprising because normally people don't like to have meetings on Fridays. But we talk about everything. We talk about statistics that we're seeing through Balto or through business intelligence about dropped calls, the time frame that that's happening. That's typically those dropped calls are happening first thing in the morning, that 8:30 to 9 range or whatever the start of your day is, whether that's outbound drops or inbound drops. And that's because people are getting on the phones late. And so we really did have a discussion about how that's impacting, when they really see during a week that we lost, or in a day that we lost 92 calls between 8:30 and 9. That's a lot of money that they know that they potentially lost. Part of how we selected the work from home people, though, was that these are the employees that have been here for a long time, but are also the employees that do the right thing even when no one's looking. We all know those employees that we have in our offices that do the right thing when no one is looking, and those are the ones that we really targeted to be our work from home agents. They're the ones that can troubleshoot problems. They're the ones that can self-manage, and they're they're overall incredibly compliant. We don't have a lot of failed calls or quality assurance issues with these employees. So we really, I would say, to answer the question is having that conversation, providing them with actual facts to show them how that is actually impacting their money, as well as the success and the happiness of the consumers that are calling into the office. Because it is really frustrating when somebody calls in and they know we're open, and yet for no good reason, they weren't able to connect to an agent and then had to leave a voicemail for a callback. That doesn't start the call or that consumer's interaction with your company on the right foot. So that's kind of what we did. And I will totally agree. I think training and onboarding now is my number one issue currently. We talked about this yesterday. Training is different. You're not having office meetings at the conference room anymore. So figuring out what that's going to look like and how to do that is a challenge moving forward. We hired just before the pandemic, about 45 days before the pandemic, and not business days, 45 days. We hired 4 collectors. So they had barely gotten on the phones. We have been able to ramp up the speed in which we're able to get agents onboarded because of Balto. They don't have to have all of these pieces of paper and stuff that they have to figure out. What do I say on a Zortman message? Because it pops up. So that's been super helpful, but we really had them on the phones for maybe 2 weeks. And not all day. They were still kind of nesting with a more experienced person. And then they were off work from March 18th to May 11th. Actually, they were the last ones to come back, so May 18th, even to June 1st. I had a couple that came back even later than that to childcare and other COVID-related issues. And so they forgot everything. They didn't know how to use Cubs. They didn't know how to, that's the collection system we're on. They didn't remember how to do anything. They didn't remember the compliance stuff. So, thankfully, Balto was incredibly helpful with that once we were able to get them on the phones. But just before the pandemic, I signed up for the ACA training pass. And so that really helped because I'm a certified trainer that I can train my staff. But I can't train them the way that I used to, which is sitting down in a conference room and going through a training program. So I was able to put them on the FDCPA training through the training pass, each of them individually on their own computers and their own workstations, and then do the essential collection skills and techniques, and then redo the collector system training, and then have them go back into our CAST IMS to review work instructions and different things. And then they were able to get on in Balto. They were able to deal with issues that came up and find solutions, and they were comfortable. They were not afraid because they knew that they had that tool there to make sure that they were on track.
Great, thank you. I'd really encourage you to continue to ask questions and take advantage of the wealth of information we have here with Courtney. So, okay, sorry, I think I cut you off there.
I was just going to agree with that. So I think that's a perfect segue for Mark here. I think he's geared up here. So.
Absolutely. And first of all, Courtney, thank you so much for all that. I'm really glad to hear that Balto has been useful for you guys, especially during this pandemic. And as we try to build our cultures, we've thought that as a remote team, we can all high five because we look at the production and production's good. And we say, hooray, we have production. Remote is perfect forever. This will be fine. But you mentioned, what do you do with that collector who is always doing the right thing when no one is looking? And that individual is now sitting at their home by themselves and could use probably a little bit of reinforcement and a little bit of celebration. And that's one of the things I'll show everyone here in Balto is how we do that. So here we go. I'm going to kick it on. Let's see if GoToWebinar cooperates. And can everyone hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Sweet. So what just happened is Balto is now analyzing everything I say as I say it, as if I'm the collector, and everything you all say as you say it, as if you're the consumer. So this first section that probably pops up, it just turned green because when the call comes in from TCN or if you place an outbound call, Balto will automatically get a trigger that said the call started and turn green just like this. And then what's going to happen is as I say each of these items, it's going to automatically check it off. So me as the collector, I have that support that says, here's the things you need to get done on this call, which could be compliance or negotiation. And then what do you know? Every single thing I say has analytics on the back end. So Courtney and her management is able to see, who is doing the right things, who is missing some of the items that they need to hit, and how can we train and coach in order to help them. So if I say, hi, is this Courtney? Yeah, hey, my name is Mark. I'm calling about a sensitive business matter. For your protection, can you please verify the last four of your social? Thank you for that. I do have to let you know this is an attempt to collect a debt, and any information obtained will be used for that purpose. And I'm calling because I'm showing an outstanding balance of $1,042. How would you like to take care of that balance today? So you guys can see it's automatically rolling through, checking these off, and I'm trying to do it a little bit quick to show you, that you can talk like a normal person. We say that Balto is the anti-script. Take your scripts and rip them up, throw them away, because reading off a piece of paper is, how we used to do it in the 80s. Now consumers expect that we have a more dynamic experience, that they feel like it's personalized. They don't feel like there's a section in your script that says wait for consumer response. So I'll roll through the rest of these here. I can say, okay, perfect. What's your preferred method of payment? Imagine that your collectors ask that on every right party contact. Imagine that they always ask what's your preferred method of payment, what that could do for your net revenue. Perfect. Let's go ahead and set up that payment. One of the things that we've seen is really helpful is, let's say you have a new program you're launching, you have a texting program you're launching, or you have one of our customers has a Better Business Bureau review program. They want to get more reviews, Better Business Bureau reviews when the consumer has a positive experience. Well, how do you end up getting everybody to get on board with that new program? Or maybe you have a special thing that you're trying to do for tax season. Really, really difficult, and it used to involve standing up in the middle of the collections floor on a Monday and saying, hey folks, here's what we're going to be doing this week. And that's a little harder now. So with Balto, you take those changes, put it right into your checklist, and now you're at scale for everybody on your collections floor. Everyone starts asking, perfect, Courtney, will you be comfortable receiving text messages from us about updates with your account? And oh my God, thank you so much for your payment. Have a wonderful day. And this is where Balto is going to give you a quick attaboy or attagirl, a little high five, because if you're by yourself at home collecting, you got kids in the background, it's a stressful time, a little bit of positive celebration here is important. So I'll show everybody just two more things.
I want to say one thing, Mark. Can I say one thing?
Please, Courtney, go ahead.
The agents, I thought that the confetti would not be quite a hit, but they love it. They get mad sometimes if they say the winning statement, which is when you get confetti. And when they say it, but they say it differently, or maybe they make a run-on sentence so it doesn't recognize the phrase, which is rare, and usually is an opportunity for training. But they love the confetti. They absolutely are super motivated by the confetti, and it's really funny.
It's really cool.
And actually, let me see if I can show you. I can show you after this call, but Balto has a little trophy. I imagine that nobody here on this webinar has competitive collectors. No one is competitive. No one wants to be the best. They don't care about leaderboards. Well, for your peers who definitely do have competitive collectors, Balto will actually show them a little leaderboard and show how they're ranking in hitting these items compared to the other people on the collections floor. And Courtney, that usually gets pretty heated as well.
Yeah, they love that, and they argue with each other about it too. Like, oh, hey, I'm beating you.
We had a question come in related to compliance and these checklists. In implementing this, did you notice an uptick or a drop in compliance, both with Balto or even with sending your agents to work from home?
Definitely an uptick in compliance. We didn't have, probably overnight when we implemented this, the call escalations went completely down. Oh, it's recognizing when I'm saying stuff. The escalations are down. We're not having as many irate consumers and calls, or even frustrated collectors, because they're able to stick on to the checklist or the deck list items as they pop up. Yeah, that would be my biggest. I would say that definitely compliance has been has improved significantly.
Just as a follow-up with that, do you do collections in other languages, like for example Spanish? I guess, does Balto support that language, or how is your agency handling bilingual requests or calls?
Mark, I don't think you guys are bilingual yet.
We're not. We are very close though. The first thing we're going to be doing is what we call Spanish bifurcation, which is essentially just detecting, is this call English or Spanish? And if it's Spanish, we'll be able to exclude that from your reporting until we have the full Spanish language built out. But we have hired engineers on Balto's side to get started on Spanish. We have customers who are excited about it. So Spanish is coming, but not quite yet.
Yeah, so we have the agents, if they're on a Spanish call, they can manually stop Balto by pressing the stop button at the bottom of the screen, which you can't see right now, but it was there when we were on the checklist. So they'll manually stop those calls, so it's not tracking those calls. And we do have a huge Spanish population. So down there, you can see the stop button. So we're looking forward to the Spanish option.
Awesome. Courtney, we can get you in the beta group when we first roll it out.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, Courtney, pointed out that when we were talking about implementation, Balto automatically popped up the talking points for that, and there it is again. And you can, by the way, put a whole bunch of logic that says only do it if it pops up in the first minute, or do it only one time, because if the person keeps saying implementation all throughout the call, you don't want to keep popping. Those are the sort of things you could do to get a really unique and personalized experience for your collectors. But here's a situation that everybody has had, and quite literally everybody. A consumer on the phone saying, I just can't afford to do anything right now. I don't have any money for this sort of thing. Balto just heard me say that, figured out that this was a can't pay stall, and popped up my talking points right here that I can use. So first of all, talk about empathetic collections. Starting with something like, I understand where you're coming from. We've all been in a similar situation. Something that lets the consumer know, like, hey, it's a crazy time. Like, this is not because you're a bad person or because you're, financially reckless. It's because it's really hard to make good financial decisions right now, and I get it. So that's a good thing to start with. And by the way, imagine now you're scaling out that empathy to everyone in your collections agency, right? How else? It's very difficult to do that otherwise. And then boom, my talking points just popped up for this. So I can say, all right, well, McKay, to start, what does your current employment situation look like? Balto heard that, checked it off. So these are my negotiating points, right? And check down here. How about we schedule payments of $57 until your balance is taken care of? That's the sort of thing that everybody wants their collectors saying. Some number that's not the lowest possible payment. It's a specific number. It's usually an odd number because that feels, it's called the odd even rule. And it feels more logical and appropriate to consumers, and they're more likely to pay. So that's this, and it's a step down. So you have other bigger asks you have before then. That's the sort of thing you can scale out to everyone. So they're not just getting into an argument, but instead using real negotiations to collect more on their costs. And then the last thing I'll mention on this thing is that everything here is being tested. So Balto is going to say, aha, when the collector gives this first question and asks about the employment situation, it results in a payment 28% of the time. But if they ask this down here, it results in payment 35% of the time. So you're able to not just use the same talk track you might have been using for 20 years, although I'm sure it's a great talk track. You're able to update it and make it the talk track of 2030 by testing out what is working and what isn't. And in the last maybe minute here, I'll show everyone. Imagine that the consumer says, honestly, I actually am going to have to talk to my attorney about this. They're the ones representing me here. Balto just heard that and said, hey, whoa, high impact situation. You might end up making a compliance mistake. Make sure you either transfer it to the manager or get the attorney's contact information, because you can't just go on negotiating like normal now. So those are the sort of ways that in real time, remote, not remote, wherever your collectors are, you can help them collect as much as possible on the phones and help them stay compliant, especially when these compliance criteria will be changing very, very quickly. I will turn it back to you, Bryce, you, McKay, and you, Courtney.
Thank you, Mark. That was fantastic. It's awesome to see how that can stay on top of the agents. Courtney, the other day when we were talking, one of the things, as we talk about those core four of reporting and automation, you brought up some things just with the automation with IVR and some things you've implemented that really helped your collections. Why don't you take a moment and touch on that if you could?
Well, I probably was one of the only agencies that hadn't implemented a payment IVR, an automated system to handle payments when an agent wasn't available. I always thought about it, but then I considered, and my thoughts went to, well, we don't really get that many calls after hours. How many people are really going to do that instead of speaking to an agent? But when the shutdown happened, I went ahead and got moving on that pretty quickly. So thankfully, I had good business relationships with vendor Payment Vision. They were able to get us set up within about. So that was really able to get up, and it was perfect. So we started out with some low IVR payments. In March, I really was surprised to see anybody select that they wanted to speak to it or do a payment through the IVR. But last month, I think we were up at about 82,000 in payments. So we went from 18 payments in March to like 700 some odd payments in July. And it's surprising to see how many people are actually choosing to make a payment through the IVR versus talk to an agent even during normal business hours. And what's really great about that is that there's no compliance issues if they're speaking to the payment IVR. And secondly, whenever we have implemented new IVR rules, like if somebody wants to speak to somebody in Spanish or hear things in Spanish, TCN has been amazing at being able to program our IVR, get voice talent to record whatever it is that we want it to say, and then program if an agent or a consumer presses 1 that they can go to the payment IVR. So that's been really incredible, and it's really nice to know that I can make adjustments like this on the, I guess not really quite fly, but it's pretty easy and seamless to have it implemented on the TCN side for the IVR.
Perfect. Thank you. As we kind of get more towards the top of the hour here, thing I was thinking is, one, I want to see if there's any questions while we've got Courtney here. Any things that you want to take advantage of asking the questions, please feel free to jump in, ask questions. We do want to kind of wrap it up with some of the things that TCN has in the pipeline, some of the things that we're working with. As McKay popped up, business intelligence. Maybe just a quick comment, Courtney, how do you utilize business intelligence in helping you kind of keep track of what you got going on?
Yeah, business intelligence has been really great. We've been using it for a while, and one of the best things about it is that some of the canned reports that are in there for TCN maybe don't meet what I'm looking for when I'm looking for statistics on agent conversions and things like that. So I've been really pleased that whenever there's something that we need, that we want to track, something that's a little different, TCN has been able to help program those reports. So I have a specialized report that I can track. I can track all sorts of things, inbound call conversion rates. How many inbound calls does an agent actually speak to the right party? How many outbound calls is a right party contact? And then how many of those calls are they converting to payment? How long are they waiting between calls? How many calls are they MAC approving? And what's their average wait time between calls, inbound and outbound? And then, of course, combined to be able to see a report combined on the conversion rates. And then if they are speaking to a right party, and they're what are the reasons that, or how's that call dispositioned? What's the result of the call? So I can track if I see one agent that's having a lot of calls that are bankrupt versus another agent that maybe only has one call that's bankrupt. I might want to go see what's going on those calls. I can track that, of course, in Balto, but it does give you an additional red flag or kind of, that's odd. Why does this one agent seem to be getting so many bankrupt consumers? And let's see what's going on those calls, or if she's miscoding the call, or if these are in fact accurate, or maybe does it have to do with tone and not quite understanding what's going on the call. So it's really great to be able to see that on the back end.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate it, Courtney. And I know we're close to the top of the hour. We have a little bonus for you at the end for those that can hang on just to the last couple minutes here. We've got a little bonus for the attendees to take advantage of. But I did want to kind of highlight some of the things that you might want to know of that's right around the corner or have been recently released, and have also maybe mentioned some of the things you mentioned. Spanish is coming around the corner. If you're not aware of, you may be aware of TCN's recently released Room 303, which is a built-in internal chat program. So now managers can set up rooms to chat. It's basically kind of Slack, but built into TCN. So you can set up your different rooms and have agents be able to chat back and forth. Managers can chat with agents, helping in that work from home challenge of communicating with your agents. And then quickly just want to touch upon just some of the things that we have in the pipeline that are coming right around the corner. A built-in speech analytics is right around the corner, so it'll be something that be nice to have something that's integrated directly into the TCN system. We are currently in the process of working to release a virtual assistant. We're hoping to see something like that come here very quickly, that continuing on giving the ability to be able to lessen that dependency on the agents. Workforce management, workforce optimization, a built-in version of that. And then also with our list management service that you're probably familiar with, that's been out, we're going to be doing a number of different enhancements with that to be able to help you increase being able to bring in data and information and from multiple different sources and enrich that data to be able to help you produce lists quickly to work from. So I encourage you to work with your account managers to kind of get an insight to some of the tools that have been released and how they can best help you in your challenges right now. Take a brief pause to see if there's any questions, and then Balto has a little promo for taking advantage of taking a look at their system. McKay, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, so this question is for Mark. Spanish is understandable as something that is very prevalent here in the United States as far as a language that will be available in the Balto software. But is there any plans for other languages, for example, French?
Yes, absolutely. It's a matter of prioritizing which ones we're getting the most requests from. So it is actually likely going to be Spanish and then Mandarin. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now. although Portuguese is making a little bit of a pull in the race to the next language. No race pun intended. But I think we're looking probably at Spanish, then Mandarin, and then we're thinking French actually after that.
Very good. This is actually another follow-up question to, I guess, more functionality of how Balto works, but how accurate is the voice transcription for the Balto software as it moves through those checklist items?
If I could show you, are you able to give me screen control again for a second?
Yep, certainly.
Thank you. How do let's see. Awesome, thank you. Does everybody see my screen here? So I love it when people ask how accurate Balto is, because we programmed it in and we have Balto automatically pop up the answer. So this actually, when you ask that, it's answered the question for me. So our checklist, the way that we see the checklist is you need to give the collectors the benefit of the doubt. So we actually side with making sure that collectors get credit for something, even if they're close or didn't get it exactly right, more than the alternative of saying, "Oh, sorry, you missed a word, not close enough." And you can of course always dig in with the transcript and see exactly what they said afterwards. But that is actually why our checklist is around 97% accurate, especially with collections terminology, because it just so happens a lot of the same questions come in across agencies. People are asking about two-party verification. People are asking, or two forms of verification. People are asking about the mini Miranda. And I haven't looked at other speech analytics accuracy, but I can imagine that Balto is the most accurate system on earth for picking up mini Mirandas, because we've done millions of mini Mirandas at this point. And then in terms of popping up these sort of recommendations, our rule of thumb is Balto will stay quiet and play it safe unless it's 90% or more sure that it's telling you the right thing. Because what we find is that collectors have a really high tolerance for Balto staying quiet when they kind of wish they had some help, and that happens sometimes, but they don't have as high of a tolerance for Balto telling them that the person is talking about bankruptcy when they're not really talking about bankruptcy. So we've learned to play it safe and that sort of thing. And as a result, would love if you at any point want to talk to any of our customers like Courtney and ask about how their experience has been on the accuracy side.
Cool, appreciate it. Yeah, there are a handful of other questions that have come through, but I don't think we'll have time today to get to those. So what we're going to do is we'll just close. And as Bryce mentioned, we kind of have a little item to share with you guys. And as we come to a close, we'd like to extend a small token of thanks to those in attendance. And if you sign up for a TCN Balto demo in the next 5 minutes, we'll want to give you guys a $100 Amazon gift card. So be sure to head over to go.tcn.com/Balto now. Just remember certain restrictions to apply. We'll also be dropping that link in the comment section. I'm sorry, not in the comments, in the chat below. So you go over to that website now and be sure to request a demo. We would like to thank you for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to Bryce, Mark, and especially Courtney for their time today. I hope the discussions were beneficial and will help everyone navigate through the challenges we are facing today. If you have any specific questions or would like more information on TCN Balto or Creditors Bureau, please do not hesitate to contact us today. And a quick reminder that the webinar will be available on demand at tcn.com tomorrow. Thank you and have a great day.